Hello, I'm Yilda Sethi at Crazy Normal for better health and well-being in promoting better ways of working with the mind. I'm inspired to dispel myths and lay out facts about your mind and relationships and mental health. And I'd like you to join me in an exploration of what it is to be a crazy normal like me. But do it in your own way so you can be free to be you. Hello, I have a really interesting guest with me today called Tigrilla Gardenia, and she is in
I'm in northern Italy in a community called Domenher.
Fabulous. Okay. So she's going to be sharing her way of working with us today, just to give us some idea of other ways of working around the world. So over to you, Tigrilla. Just introduce yourself.
So it's so nice to be here. Thank you so much. My name is, like you said, Tigrilla Gardenia. I am a nature-inspired mentor. I'm a certified life coach, and I'm kind of the one that always seems to catch people's attention is I'm considered a world ambassador for plant advocacy. So I really work and empower multi-passionate alternative thinkers to harness their brilliance and overcome self-doubt through deep, deep collaboration with the plant world. And so I have a wide range of experience that combines the arts and technology and communication and eco-social innovation in order to really help evolve limiting beliefs, to find positive mental health, to unify your passions, and to thrive alongside plant collaborators. That's a little just a quick snippet.
Well, it's good. I mean, I wouldn't have known all of that about you, so it's great to hear that. And I'd like to know a little bit more about this communication with plant. How does that happen? Is it through the arts? Is it through different ways of connecting with plants?
It's D, all of the above. I mean, and that's the beauty of it. So plant communication really is about entering into a relationship with a being that is very different from us. So that's kind of the beautiful part of it. It pulls us out of our human conditioned way of thinking and takes us into the mind of a being that has been on this planet since the beginning of time, 470 plus million years had plants here. And it comes in many different ways. For some people, it's going to come in a way of the words or some kind of sound or a feeling, but many aspects, it comes through other channels. And this is the beautiful part about it. The arts is a wonderful way, using all forms of art, from dance to music to drawing, to really get into a communication that takes us out of kind of the logic that we use as humans. As humans, when we communicate, our goal is to be super clear on what it is that we're saying, right? So we try very succinctly to get to the point. But when you're working with a plant, it's completely opposite. It's more of to get a clarity in your body, to get an understanding that goes beyond where all these different mechanisms can be so much more useful. It's really about finding that stillness and that presence that allows me to open all of my awareness without getting overwhelmed, but instead by allowing things to kind of flow from the plant into me. And then what I'm looking for is kind of almost non-human ways to bring understanding to that. So sometimes it could be colors, sometimes it could be memories, because plants work a lot with our memories. I often tell my clients to always have a notebook with them, even if it's like I carry a tiny one in my purse, that you can just capture whatever comes, because sometimes that memory of when I was a child and I was sitting on my father's lap and he was telling me a story and I was giggling could be the response that the plant wants you to understand from whatever it is that you're working on in that particular moment. It might be a reminder of that time, of that innocence, of allowing somebody to bring that kind of joy into your life. It could bring different aspects of it. So communicating with plants really just opens us to a whole other way of allowing information in and of processing it.
Very interesting. So, Tigrilla, what is it that drives you? What is it that makes you tick?
Yeah, so I am driven by passion, to be honest. I am a multi-passionate through and through, which means I'm a deep learner. I love looking at things and understanding them from multiple different angles. And this is what really gets me moving in such. And I want everybody to be able to express themselves fully. How do we step out of our conditioning? How do we see the world in its multifaceted state? Where I live in Damanhur, which is one of the largest spiritual communities in the world, we often say that there is no truth, there is no absolute truth in the world of form, because it's all filtered by the different aspects. So we think of truth as a crystal. And the more facets of that crystal that you can bring into your life, the more you will understand something. And so what really drives me is, how do I get us, myself included, and the people I work with, to really be able to feel comfortable enough in who they are, in their skills, in their abilities, so that they can open themselves up to see multiple facets of that crystal. Because that's where truth and collaboration and relationship really lands. I listen to you and you bring in another aspect. It doesn't negate what I feel, it enhances it. And so that is really what gets me passionate in this moment. And plants help us because, again, plants have to take in lots of input. They're sessile, right? It's rooted into the ground. They can't run away from their problems. And so I'm fascinated by the concept of what would happen if I couldn't run away from anything. If I had to deal with it, if I had to look at it, what does that look like? When do I merge into what's happening? When do I acquiesce? Versus when instead do I hold my ground? When do I fight? When do I instead collaborate? And how do I open myself to more types of relationships? And all this just gets me very passionate, especially because, again, like I was saying, to understand this, it's not about logic. It's about feeling it. And therefore, you can introduce so many different aspects, from esoteric thinking to arts to everything connects, because, again, they're all facets of the same crystal of truth that you're looking at.
Okay. And this is what drove you even as a young person?
Yeah, I was always driven by things that I had to be engrossed in. So if somebody was passionate about something, I wanted to learn about it and I wanted to. So I guess you could say that I'm driven by passion in general. Like even from a little child, I danced for many years and I did sports and I did debate. I did all kinds of things. I mean, when I tell people my history, especially even my work history and my different careers, people look at me and they're like, how old are you again? Because I have done a lot of things. But to me, there is a continuous thread in that, which has always been about bridging gaps. How do I bridge a gap from where you are right now to where you want to be? From the knowledge that you have to the knowledge you want to acquire, from one person to the other. So my kind of, you would say, main archetype is the fact that I'm a catalyst. So I give you, you're on one side of the bridge and I spark whatever you need to start crossing it. And then I hold your hand as you cross it all the way across. And this has been something that's been a part of me since I was a very, very small child. My mother used to say that I led with empathy, because that's what held the people's hand across. And so I never had one passion, because that wasn't the important part. The continuous thread is that bridge building, that helping you cross the bridge.
It sounds like a passion for knowledge as well, and a passion for experience as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And experience specifically and I like that you brought those two together, because it's not just a passion for like book knowledge.
No.
As a matter of fact, my sophomore year of college, I had transferred into the program that I eventually graduated from. And after the first semester, I went to my professors and I'm like, this is beautiful, but it's super theoretical for me. How do I bring it into practice? So I actually did 3 internships while I was in university, because it's that mix. I need to learn it and then I need to apply it. And that's the part that I really love, and why all of my work with my clients, with my students, is always a little bit of lesson and then a lot of application and then a whole heck of a lot of integration. How does this come into your life? So it doesn't matter how I did it. We can have an experience from that, but you've got to live it and you've got to bring it into your own life in whatever way works for you.
Okay. Interesting. And it's a bit like me too. I call myself a pracademic, right?
Practicing academic.
It's like, to me, knowledge is useless unless I can apply it, right? Unless I can
Exactly.
see an application that's of benefit, in particular is what I look for. Okay, so that's very interesting. And also, there's different kinds of knowledge, and there's wisdom knowledge, which is very different from academic knowledge. And yes, so we could even have a long discussion on that, no doubt. So, what was your turning point in your life, or was there a turning point, or were there a few turning points in your life?
I would say that were definitely a few turning points, but the one that stands out most clearly is so I used to work in corporate tech. I worked at Microsoft, and before that, Real Networks. So I had created this life for myself that from the outside looked like the life everybody wanted, right? I had a wonderful husband. I lived in a beautiful home in a wonderful state. I was still in the United States at that time. Had this corporate job, but that was a dream job for so many people. I mean, the idea of working at Microsoft and doing well and such. And I can't say that I was not unhappy. I just wasn't 100% fulfilled. And remember, I'm a passion person. And so at some point, I started to act, and I was doing like acting and theater work. So theater and film and singing and a little bit of dancing at the time still, in order to kind of just spark new sides of myself, to experience and experiment with other parts. I had a degree in music and engineering, and I was using more of the engineering than the music side. So I wanted to bring that artistic movement back into my life. And I met a group of people. And so, to make a very long story super short, basically, in the end, I got cast into this role that was a midnight prayer performance in this dance party. And when I met these people, I realized there was a whole different way to live life, like that experiential way to live life. These people didn't care about money. They didn't care about having a house. They didn't care about any of these types of things. What they cared about was creating art. And that passion just blew me up. Like it was like a reawakening of myself. And so that I changed everything in my life. I ended up eventually leaving my job. I left my husband. I left that lifestyle. I eventually left the country after a few years. And so that was one big piece. And then that took me to go down kind of more the esoteric arts, understanding my whole spiritual side. It started to merge this analytical mind that I had back into this more experiential, spiritual side. And then using the arts, because many of these people expressed everything through their creativity, it brought that triangle back together again, which for me was like whole. And then years later, when I came to live in Damanhur, I had this experience with the plants, specifically with plant music, and that was my plant reawakening. So one was my spiritual reawakening, and the other one was the recognition that I am an animal, but that has an inner plantness, which is my presence, my awareness, something I just did not have a relationship with at all. And this conversation with this plant, this music that for me was dialogue, that was because my musicality, which is that core essence of myself, could understand the plant through this music that the plant was making using this device, completely opened me to a world that I just didn't see. It lifted the veils of my plant blindness in a way that I could have never predicted how much it would change my life, because many of the things that I had been working on trying to eliminate in my life or release, how they talk about all this in self-help and such, I realized that I am a living ecosystem, which means everything that I have is useful to somebody if I learn how to use it right. And so it shifted the way I perceive the world. It allowed me to find a stillness of getting really comfortable with myself. And then from that place of everything is useful, let's just find its location. Even the most critical part of myself, even the most judgmentally side of myself, in the right situation, can be used for something good. And it just blew open a completely different way of being and a stillness inside of myself that I desperately needed at that time.
And so, what's been your biggest learning through the dark times? Or, we all have ups and downs, don't we? And we all have doubts at times. What's been one of your biggest learnings, or have you already spoken about that already?
Yeah, in some ways it is that part, like the understanding that my dominant personality is the critic, not the inner critic, not the I criticize myself, but the critic as in the one that sees all the teeny tiny details. And when that critic goes out of control to a certain extent, then I become, to be very honest, bluntly, bitchy, judgmental, pain. I often tell people I'm blunt and not always in a nice way because in my seeing things in this type of clarity, which is my clarity, I just blurt things out in a way. And I created a lot of problems for myself. I had many, many nights of sleeping, of crying on the floor, trying to understand why is it that I always have to be so judgmental on things. And then once I recognized this living ecosystem, the fact that the plants helped me see that everything is useful, all of a sudden, this part of myself that I had hated, I mean, you can't even imagine the years of hatred of that side of myself, of why am I that way? I've always said that if I write an autobiography, the first line is going to say, now I'm the most positive, negative person you've ever met because my mind thinks in negatives. I always think about what's missing first. And so recognizing that and the plants, like sitting in the sacred woods temple of Damanhur one day and sitting there and just like crying and trying to figure out what was wrong with me and having them say, you're not looking at yourself as an ecosystem. Everything is useful. Put this to use. How does it become useful? And it was interesting because just yesterday I was saying, I went to have these meetings here in Damanhur, and my criticality took me out of a lot of different things, and I've just been coming into them in the last maybe 10 years. And I had tons of people who were seeking me out for that critical part of me. Like, we know that you know how to help us make our project better because you can see where we're making mistakes, and then you can help us, that bridge part, get to the next place. And so that was really for me something that I spent probably about 25 years hating myself on. And then to walk through it and to find that instead it is my biggest strength was just like, it's one of those things that makes me still very emotional when I have to, when I sit down and I think about it.
And that kind of reminds me of the idea that, yes, you're absolutely right, everything has a place, but it's how we view it that's the difference. So, for example, your critic, I see that as constructive criticism, right? Which is incredibly positive. And the judgment you can call discrimination because we're not meant to just accept absolutely everything. We are meant to hone in on what feels good or right for us. We're not meant to just go down any old pathway. We are meant to make choices. So it's interesting how language, it's not just language, but it's the intention, isn't it, behind the language that makes the difference.
Yeah, especially like you said, when you're secure in yourself and you love yourself and you know that this can be a skill, as you said, it flips it. And so now I don't have to like tell you a defect in something you're doing as if you're stupid or defending my position or from a place of negative ego, like that breakdown. I don't have to break it down unless I specifically tell you, hey, just a warning. I'm about to say something, but just so you know, I'm trying to break this whole thing down because I see a major flaw. So now at least there's a dialogue because it doesn't come from a place of defense or fear on my side. It comes from a genuine desire to make things better. And so I can even be very open of like, I don't know the right words. I just had this happen with some of my clients where I was in a group setting, I was helping them facilitate. One particular person is always very quiet, but I know she has deep feelings. So I said, you're gonna hate me at this, but I'm gonna call you out. I need you to express yourself right now because the other group doesn't understand. And when she expressed, what came out was so powerful that the rest of the group looked at her like, we had no idea. And I said, and then I helped her summarize it in a way that the group really understood. And she said, for the first time, I feel seen. And, it's a risk. You're pulling out somebody who doesn't feel like speaking. So you really have to make sure that this isn't about me. This isn't about what I want. This is about really being able to analyze that group. And so that is that piece of that nature, like you said, it's discernment, it is discrimination, it is looking at it from the eyes of love, because I love myself enough to trust my instincts, to trust who I've become, to trust my skill set, and then be able to pull that out. And at the same time, give them perfect permission that says, you're still in charge. So if I'm doing something that goes beyond, you call me out on it. I want to be called out because I don't have all facets of the truth. I want you to give me your facets so that we can put this all together.
And can you tell us how what you do in terms of your work you work and live in your spiritual center, is that correct?
I do. I live in Damanhur in my spiritual community, but I work all around the world.
Okay.
So my work as a mentor and as a coach is really about creating a safe space. Many multi-passionates have been told most of their lives, pick one thing, you're jumping around from thing to thing, like what is your focus and all these. And I don't believe in any of that. I believe that the jumping around can be extremely useful when you understand that archetype, right? Like my bridge has needed to have lots of different forms of input in order to be able to, to carry out that function. And I want people to be able to understand their deep, what in nature is called your deep pattern. And so I give you lots of space. My job really as your coach and a mentor is not to tell you what to do, but to hold a big space and to allow you to dump everything into it. And then that critical nature, let me go through it and let's go through it together and figure out how do you apply these pieces. And really it's about building up a deep relationship with plants because that changes our logic. It also improves our mental and our physical health, right? There's many, many studies about the relationship, the deep relationship with nature and how it, drops cortisol levels, how it helps us find positive mental health, how it allows us to be more altruistic and generous because that relationship and from a physical as well as from a psychological perspective changes things. And so working deeply with the plants, you can get out of your human conditioning, sit in that stillness without by taking in all that input and then look at everything that you've dumped into this sacred space that we've created and start to put it together in different ways. Start to find your mastery. Start to find all those skills and those personality traits that you've been hiding and look at it and say, okay, where is this useful and how can this be worked on? So it's really about building relationships with yourself as well as with others. And I do this in both a one-on-one setting as well as always in a community setting. I founded an online community called the Naturally Conscious Community that is an online space that also allows us to have these deep human-plant connections and to expand on that. But it's also a place for all of us who are, again, multi-passionates, alternative thinkers, really nature-loving folks to be able to talk amongst each other because I can't be your only facet of the truth, right? I can help you find your different facets, but I also want you to immediately have more facets that you can compare notes with and more places where you can apply what's coming into you. And I think that that's the other big piece of this is that the combination one-on-one and the group community allows you to not just ever create one form of reference. You have multiples immediately, and you can have a peer network as well as somebody that can just hold that space for you. So that's how I always work with my clients.
Okay, fantastic. So look, you can send me some contact details if you like, or a website that I can direct people to in the notes.
Yes.
And I'm sure my audience would be fascinated with your ideas. We've had such an interesting range of people so far, and I so agree with this. I so disagree with you, with you, not against you. That many of us have many different skills and many different passions. I've been told as well too that, why are you doing all these different things? Why don't you just pick the one? It's like because they're all relevant and they're all actually add up to the big picture and the big one. So why would I limit myself like that? That doesn't make any sense. So I think there is almost a turning point at the moment with more people like you and I accepting that, some people are good at half a dozen things or more, you know? And
Yep.
why do we have to limit ourselves to shut all that down and say, no, I just do this little tiny segment? No, not true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And it's amazing that how so many of us also that are multi-passionate, not just do we hear that all the time, but we start to get embarrassed that we're good at a lot of things. And we start to hold ourselves back from doing all these things that we're good at. And it's like, I don't want that. I would never want you to like give up your talents just because you have multiple other talents that you could be good at. It's like, no, you want to live them through because as you said, they all have their purpose. They all have their place. They all do something for you. They stimulate something, they teach you something, and they help you carry out that overarching path that you're trying to accomplish.
And also accepting all of your gifts or passions or endeavoring or learning or whatever it is part of being fully in your body, in your mind, in your soul. Why would you want to hide it, you know?
Exactly.
I'm not going to hide it just to stop others feel embarrassed that they haven't taken those steps, you know? That's their journey, not mine. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But that was a big turning point for me to realize that, to recognize that I had been holding myself back,
Yeah.
trying to like hold up my friends, you know, all of those that have that sort of nurturing, mothering type side where you say your friends and you are up for the same role, for example, and you're like, no, you take it, you do it, you know, because you think to yourself, well, I can go do this, and this. And it's like, it becomes a point where you are hiding. You're just hiding yourself.
Yeah, I guess so. And I suppose for me, over my time, I'm obviously older than you, but now I just work by myself for myself, and that's just perfect for me, you know. So, you know, you get to a point where I don't want to make any excuses for anybody else. I'll just be responsible for me. Thank you very much.
Imagine I live in community, which means we do everything together.
Yes, I know.
Because we do everything in groups and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But the positive side of it is that it's by design. In other words, it's not like when I work in a company and I just walk into a company and everybody thinks that they are told that they have to work in a group, but everybody thinks they're an individual contributor, and so they're pushing for that. Here, you've chosen to live in a place where, as you know, as a group, you're supposed to figure things out, where you're supposed to touch each other and like file down all of the like sharp points and find ways of working together. So at least it's kind of built into the culture. We're still not great at it, by the way. We make tons of mistakes, but at least it's built into the culture to talk about the fact that it's like, hey, we're supposed to be working as a group and we're sucking at it really badly right now. What's going on?
I mean, what that shows you is there's no one way to work with a group, right?
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
So accepting that is a good starting point. Anyway, it's been delightfully talking with you, Tigrilla. And
Tigrilla.
Yeah, I'm struggling with your name. I'm sorry. Mine's a difficult name too, and yet I'm struggling. But anyway, never mind. So lovely to talk to you, and I'll put your details in this pod when it goes out, and no doubt people will contact you to find out what that you can do for them or work with you or whatever.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
really
thank
interesting
you.
conversation.
Thank you. And so I hope you found that really interesting, everybody. Another very interesting lady who's doing her own thing in her own way and creating her own way of thinking, which is perfect for Crazy Normal. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can find out more about me and what I offer at rapidcorehealing.com or contact me at yildiz@yildizsethi.com.